Suggestion.
Right, well, I welcome members to the 14th meeting in 2013 of the Subordinate-Legislation Committee, and as always ask members to turn off their mobile phones, please. Agenda item 1 is a decision on taking business in private. It's proposed that committee takes items 5 and 6 in private. Item 5 is consideration of the committee's approach to the scrutiny of the delegated powers provisions in the Regulatory Reform Scotland Bill, and item 6 is consideration of the committee's approach to the scrutiny of instruments implementing the provisions of the Children's Hearings Scotland Act 2011. Do members agree that we take those in private, please? We do, thank you. Agenda item 2 is instruments subject to negative procedure. The Police Service of Scotland Amendment Number 2 Regulations 2013 SSI 2013-125. This instrument corrects several instances of defective drafting, lack of clarity and drafting errors identified by this committee in the Police Service of Scotland Regulations 2013, the Police Service of Scotland Police Cadets Regulations 2013, the Police Service of Scotland Special Constables Regulations 2013, the Police Service of Scotland Conduct Regulations 2013, and the Police Services of Scotland Performance Regulations 2013. It does not make any other substantive provision. It is the usual practice of Scottish ministers to issue corrective instruments free of charge to all known recipients and to include a headnote disclosing this fact. Ministers have not done so in this case. Whilst ministers have a discretion in the matter, the committee may consider that the purpose of the practice is to promote accessibility of legislation and to ensure that end users are not put to additional expense in gaining access to legislation where corrective action is required. The committee may also consider that it is this principle that should be applied when considering whether a corrective instrument should be issued free of charge or not. Guiding principle is not whether the ministers themselves consider individual corrections among those which are necessary or not. Applying this principle to the current instrument, the committee may consider that it's clear that the primary objective of this instrument was to correct acknowledged defects. The committee may also wish to note in particular that amendments were required to the police cadets regulations in order for them to have the legal effect the government intended. The committee previously reported its dissatisfaction with the Scottish Government's decision not to consolidate the existing police cadet regulations but to apply them with modifications. The committee considered this approach hindered access by affected persons to the legislation as it is in force. In these circumstances, the committee may have expected the government to mitigate the additional inconvenience to those affected by providing this instrument to them free of charge. Does the committee therefore agree to draw the instrument to the attention of the Parliament on the general reporting ground? We do. Thank you. The late payment of commercial debts, Scotland Number 2 Regulations 2013 SSI 2013-131. There's been a failure to lay this instrument at least 28 days before it comes into force, as required by Section 28.2 of the Interpretation and Legislative Reform Scotland Act 2010. The committee may wish to find the breach of the 28-day rule acceptable in this case, since it is important to ensure that Scots law properly implements Directive 2011/7/EU as quickly as possible. Does the committee therefore agree to draw the instrument to the attention of the Parliament on reporting ground J, as there has been a failure to lay the instrument at least 28 days before it came into force, as required by Section 28.2 of the Interpretation and Legislative Reform Scotland Act 2010? We do. Does the committee...
We seem to be getting quite a few of these. What's the reason why are these coming late?
I think the reasons are varied, actually. Do our legal advisors want to comment particularly on why this one was late in the first place?
I can't comment on why it was late. That's a matter for the Scottish Government. In relation to this particular instrument, as opposed to its predecessor, the Scottish Government took the decision that it was important to implement EU law correctly as quickly as possible, and that's why it's not complied with the 28-day rule in this case.
I'm just flagging up a concern, Chair, that we seem to get quite a few of these now, and I don't understand why that's happening repeatedly. Okay. Perhaps somebody could draw their attention to somebody who's managing.
No, this is one that is late because we want it to be late.
No, I'm not specifically addressing this one.
No, but this is one it is late because it's responding to something that we've previously said.
And
We
many
want it to be late. We would be even more critical if it were not late.
Indeed, and many of the late ones which we have received recently have been in a response to our request to change something. I think it's also generally true that the late ones are becoming slightly less frequent. I think that's actually what the statistics tell us. But I think in principle we're absolutely with you. We'd like things to be on time.
Could we have a figure of that when we do our report?
Yes, we do.
Thank you.
We do. That will come through.
Thank you, Chair.
Yeah. Does the committee therefore agree to find the explanation given by the Scottish Government for the failure to lay this instrument at least 28 days before it came into force to be acceptable? We do. Thank you. Agenda item 3, instruments not subject to any parliamentary procedure. No points have been raised by our legal advisers on the Freedom of Information Amendment Scotland Act 2013 Commencement and Transitional Provision Order 2013 SSI 2013-136 Chapter 10. Is the committee content with this instrument, please?
Content.
Agenda item 4, the Aquaculture and Fisheries Scotland Bill. This item of business is consideration of the delegated powers provisions in this bill after stage 2. Members will have noted that the Scottish Government has provided a supplementary delegated powers memorandum and will have seen the draft report and the briefing paper. Stage 3 consideration of the bill is due to take place on Wednesday the 15th of May. The deadline for lodging instruments is 4:30 on this Thursday the 9th of May. The committee may therefore wish to agree its conclusions today. Does the committee agree to report that it does not need to draw the attention of the Parliament to the new delegated powers provisions in the section 19A2 and 4, or the substantially amended powers in sections 1, 2, inserting section 4A5 of the Aquaculture and Fisheries Scotland Act 2007, 3, section 20, inserting section 46F of the Salmon and Freshwater Fisheries Consolidation Scotland Act 2003, 22 and 50, read with section 52(2). Does the committee also agree to report that it welcomes that the amendment of the powers in sections 3, 4 and 20, inserting section 46F of the Salmon and Freshwater Fisheries Consolidation Scotland Act 2003 implements recommendations of the committee in its stage 1 report? Finally, does the committee also agree to report that it welcomes the fact that the application of the affirmative procedure to the exercise of the powers in section 50 of the bill, powers to charge in connection with fisheries functions, achieved by the amendment of section 52(2), implements a recommendation of the committee in its stage 1 report? Thank you. At which point I can move the meeting into private. Thank you very much.